Hello. Welcome back to our channel. Beyond the Gates will be postponed from Wednesday, December 31st, due to CBS Sports broadcast of the Sun Bowl. However, BTG will return with episode 200 on New Year's Day. On Thursday, January 1st, 2026, prepare for more heartbreaking and unexpected moments as the Dupree family learns of Anita's diagnosis. This includes Dany demanding Bill's attention. Unfortunately for Dany, Haley has to listen to her complaints. And don't worry, Bill's new wife will also respond with sharp words. Key points to remember. BTG returns on January 1st with its 200th episode, marking a significant milestone, and also the final episode of Season 1. The Dupree family braces themselves to share Anita's heartbreaking diagnosis in an emotional atmosphere. Dany wants to get Bill's attention, and Haley shows her exactly where to go. January 1st, 2026 should have been a new beginning, but in Fairmont Crest, the new year opened like a tear cut straight into the flesh of the Dupree family. 200 was not just a pretty milestone to celebrate, it was the perfect excuse for everything that had been compressed all season to rupture at once. With no way back, the news that Anita had breast cancer, and that it was a particularly aggressive type, crashed into the house like a slab of ice, so heavy that everyone had to brace just to stay upright. Those who had known earlier were shaken in a different way, not by surprise, but by a guilt braided tightly with panic as they looked at faces out there that still didn't know. In the Dupree home, fear did not live only in Anita's diagnosis. It lived in the speed. When the doctor did not hesitate, when everything had to happen immediately, decisions that usually needed time to breathe became a sprint, and in a sprint like that, kindness and ambition always find a way to wear the same coat. Anita hadn't even had the chance to tell everyone in her own way before the family was already organizing, already assigning roles, already deciding who would deliver the news, who would be responsible for keeping relationships from collapsing, who would have to look strong, so the others wouldn't splinter. Unity began to be spoken aloud, but underneath it, hairline fractures started to spread, because when a symbol like Anita is threatened, the power around her automatically trembles like a chandelier after a hard dar. Nicole carried the responsibility of telling Martin and Kat, not merely as a mother but as someone trying to keep the family structure from breaking apart before they even found a way to hold Anita up. Nicole chose the moment, chose the rhythm, chose the words in her head, but no matter how careful she was, pain refused to follow a script. Some bad news cannot be delivered like information. It is always a slap to the listener's inner life. Martin took it like a stone dropping into his chest, locking his reactions in place. The freeze in him wasn't exactly numbness, it was survival. Deeper still, Martin was fighting another weight pressing down on him, something that would not allow him to collapse in public. Because if he fell apart, a secret might surface right in the middle of the chaos. His silence, therefore, carried the color of guilt, leaving Nicole both tender and furious. And Kat, instead of dissolving, tended to turn shock into something sharp. Some people meet loss with tears, others with rage, and Kat belonged to the second kind. She saw Anita's illness as an invasion of the family's territory, and her first instinct was to hunt for who and why it came so late, who delayed, who blurred the warning signs, who made the family learn later than they should have. In Kat's mind, the aggressiveness of the disease wasn't only biological, it was an emblem of a toxin that had been circling the family for a long time, waiting for this moment to flare. Naomi and Chelsea were struck just as hard during their visit to their grandparents, a visit that should have been warm, only to become the moment they realized the family was no longer untouchable. Naomi's shock came with pain and anger that she didn't know sooner, so she could have been there, anger at the feeling of being kept outside the circle of trust, and anger because, on the same day she had to worry about Anita, she also had to endure other storms orbiting her life like a flock of black birds. Chelsea reacted more quietly, but her quiet was dangerous. She began to look at everyone with an evaluating gaze, asking herself who was telling the truth, who was simply playing their part, who was using Anita's condition as a curtain for other moves. In the middle of that upheaval, Dany chose to charge straight into Bill's house like a flame demanding oxygen. Dany demanded attention not because she didn't understand the family's pain, but because she was haunted by the feeling of losing control. Anita was sick, everything was spinning faster, and Dany hated most of all being pushed to the margins. She wore her anger like a thick coat, pulling it on so no one could see the fear trembling underneath her skin. Dany told herself she came for Naomi and Chelsea, that Bill needed to be with them, that the family had to gather. But deeper down, she came to test something else. Whether something even more serious was happening inside Bill's house, something no one had had time to see yet, something that, if it erupted alongside Anita's cancer, would shatter everything. Dany had always known Bill's weakness was memory, nostalgia, the softening that came over him when the Dupree family pulled him backward into old holidays and older belonging. Dany wanted to use that weakness like a zipper, pulling Bill out of the orbit Haley was trying to nail him into. Haley, on the opposite side, was so exhausted that her irritation became slick, no longer exploding loudly, but turning into a bitter glue stuck to every thought. She heard the complaints like the ticking of a clock counting down her own time. Dany always consumed Bill's attention, and that hit Haley at her deepest nerve. The fear of replacement, of being nothing more than the wife on paper, while Bill's heart and memory still belonged to vacations and histories tied to the Duprees. Haley was Bill's wife, and she wanted the entire gaze to land on her. Not out of pure love, but because the power of that position was the only thing she trusted to protect her from being crushed. That very contradiction, however, made Haley darker. She wanted Bill dependent on her, focused on her, cared for in a way that left him too foggy to decide for himself. Bill's nostalgia for the Duprees was a dull blade sawing at Haley's pride, feeding her jealousy into hate, and from that point, her choices began crossing moral lines she once believed she would never touch. Haley did not shut Dany out. She chose direct confrontation because she believed Dany had no concrete proof, and because she understood one thing: when there is noise, people pay less attention to whispers. If Haley needed to hide another action unfolding in the house, then a staged show with Dany was the perfect curtain. The entire place became a stage, and Haley was the one trying to control the light. Dany came in demanding that Bill be with Naomi and Chelsea, and that demand hit the exact territory Haley was trying to occupy: the right to decide Bill's movement in this moment. To Haley, every call of "for the family" sounded like a grab. She didn't just see Dany as an inconvenience. She saw Dany as a direct threat to the plan running in her head like a machine. While the Dupree family outside spun around Anita's illness, Haley spun around a separate objective: forcing Bill to sign or stamp something before he was fully awake, before he had time to question, before anyone in the Duprees could pull him back toward them. And the most frightening part was how Haley convinced herself it wasn't a crime. It was ensuring safety, stabilizing the future, protecting the marriage. That self-justification made her colder, because when someone believes they're doing the right thing, they can do the cruelest thing without their hand shaking. Dany, meanwhile, wasn't only furious with Haley. Dany was furious with Bill. Furious that he let himself be pulled into the past. Furious that he softened so easily. Furious that his softness could leave Naomi and Chelsea alone at the exact moment they needed him most. At the same time, Dany felt a sick shame, because she was using anger like a knife to cut a path for herself. She didn't want to admit. She was afraid Bill wouldn't stand with the Duprees when the family needed him, afraid Haley would lock Bill down with invisible ropes. Afraid something in this house was moving as fast as Anita's treatment plan, and if it wasn't stopped, everything would pass the point of rescue. Dany might already know that Haley intended to kill Bill, and the question was no longer whether, but how she knew. Dany wasn't the kind of person to hurl an accusation without a signal. If she knew, it could be because she overheard a conversation meant to be private, because she noticed small signs like changes in Bill's routine, unusual fatigue, herbal tea appearing at the moments he was weakest, papers laid out on the table like a trap. Or worse, She knew because someone inside Bill's house tipped her off, someone too afraid to step forward publicly, only able to push the information toward Dany like a bomb and then retreat. Dany understood that if she said it outright, she would be painted as the troublemaker, the one exploiting Anita's illness to attack someone else's marriage. But if she stayed silent, she might be allowing Bill to walk into a lethal snare. Dany was trapped in a poisonous choice: speak and become the villain in everyone's eyes, or stay quiet and become an accomplice through silence. Bill stood between the two women like a man between two different poisons. One was Haley's cold control, the other was Dany's wildfire. And Bill wasn't naive. He felt the shift in the house, felt the air sharpen like heated metal. His memories of the Duprees weren't only nostalgia, they were where he could still feel belonging on a day when everything was slipping away. Anita's illness pulled him toward family, toward Naomi and Chelsea, toward the people he always believed he would show up for when they needed him. But Haley pulled him toward the present, toward the marriage, toward responsibility as she defined it, always in a way that served her. Somewhere between those forces, Bill began to recognize something terrifying. While the Dupree household panicked over Anita, someone might be exploiting the panic to do something else entirely. Everyone's attention was being sucked into medical schedules, port placement, chemotherapy.
Urgent décision.
Other things, documents, assets, wills, power, became details to handle later. And that later was fertile ground for a scheme. Inside the Dupree home, the question of when did Anita discover it began to hammer at everyone's thoughts. If the cancer was aggressive and only now fully clear, did someone delay disclosing results? Did Anita hide it to protect the family through the holidays, to keep them from spiraling? Or did another hand interfere, stretching time to prepare a private move? When the doctor pushed for immediate treatment, was it purely professional urgency, or was there pressure from someone who wanted Anita locked into a plan so fast that everything around her became non-negotiable? Because once a treatment plan begins, everything revolves around it. Once a port placement is scheduled, people must sign forms, grant authority, make financial decisions, arrange representatives, and in those decisions, power can transfer hands before anyone notices. When Nicole told Martin and Kat, she didn't only inform them. She chose the timing because she knew Martin and Kat were already standing at the edge of choices that could fracture the family. Nicole understood Martin. The more cornered he felt, the more tightly he sealed his emotions, the harder he became to read. She feared that freeze would keep him from reaching Anita the way she needed. And she understood Kat. The more pain, the more Kat would want to strike. If Kat turned her shock into a hunt for a culprit inside the family, the fire could burn the remaining structure
To ash.
Nicole wanted her children strong, yet feared that their strength might become a weapon pointed in the wrong direction. Back at Bill's house, Dany was pushed out, but she didn't vanish like a loser. If Dany truly left, she would kill the only chance she had to plant a seed of doubt in Bill. She knew Bill didn't believe smooth words, he believed patterns. So Dany had to leave a detail behind. Not a direct accusation, but a small piece sharp enough for Bill to assemble on his own. Something connected to Haley's habits, a subtle change in Bill's daily rhythm, an object carelessly misplaced, a marking on documents, a signature given without reading, a herbal remedy appearing on the exact days Bill felt weakest. Dany didn't need to call it poisoning. She only needed Bill to wonder why he was tired, why he kept drifting, why every time he tried to leave to see Naomi and Chelsea, something pulled him back into the house. Once Bill began to question, Haley would lose her advantage, because the greatest advantage of a manipulator is that the victim doesn't realize they are being manipulated. Haley, in her rage, became more likely to reveal her sharp edges. She couldn't stand Bill being pulled toward the Duprees at the exact moment she needed him focused on her. Her exhaustion wasn't the exhaustion of a loving partner, it was the exhaustion of someone holding up a long game. She was haunted by the thought that if Bill put Anita, Naomi, and Chelsea first, her plan would slip out of her hands. And in that moment, Haley faced her hardest decision. Accelerate everything tonight, or slow down to avoid suspicion. But slowing down meant risk. Bill could become clearer. He could ask more. He could meet more people. And if Bill met Naomi, if he met Chelsea, if he met the Duprees, a single careless sentence could collapse the entire structure Haley had built. The choice between safety and speed backed Haley into her own corner. She chose speed because she believed speed always wins. And right there, the viciousness of Haley's plan mirrored the viciousness of Anita's disease, granting no one time to prepare, forcing everyone to react in panic. Meanwhile, at the Dupree house, phone calls and the spreading of the news made the home vibrate like a disturbed hive. The shock traveled, each person receiving it in their own way, but the shared demand was the same. Everyone had to stay calm so they wouldn't make Anita carry more weight. That calm, for many, was a mask. Under the mask, anger existed, but there was nowhere to release it because releasing it now would be labeled selfish. And when anger cannot be released, it becomes suspicion. People began to look at each other with questions they didn't say out loud. Who knew early? Who hid it? Who delayed? Who is taking advantage? Those questions didn't need answers yet. Simply by existing, the family was already dividing along invisible lines. Everyone knew they had to unite for Anita. But unity itself became a battlefield. Because to unite, they had to trust. And right now, trust was the most expensive thing in the house. Martin's emotional freeze made others suspicious. Kat's sharpness made others afraid. Nicole's attempts to manage the collapse made others feel controlled. Dany's explosions exhausted everyone. And Bill, being pulled between the Duprees and Haley, became the piece that could tip the balance of power at the exact moment Anita stepped into urgent treatment. January 1st ended without the feeling of an ending. It was like a door slammed shut, leaving a long echo down the hallway. Because Season 2 began immediately on January 2nd, and nothing gave anyone time to breathe. Anita was heading toward port placement. Everything had to move fast, so fast that a single wrong signature, a misassigned proxy, a stamped document signed in a fogged mind could drag the entire family into a war not only against cancer, but against itself. And in Bill's house, where Dany had left behind a quiet piece of the puzzle, Haley stood inside the most terrifying silence of all. The silence of someone who knows she has little time left before others begin to see. Bill, though he hadn't said it aloud, had started to replay every small detail of the last few days. And the first seed of suspicion sprouted without sound. When a man begins to doubt the woman pouring his tea, everything has crossed into a stage that cannot be reversed. And in the very moment the Duprees believed they were preparing to fight to keep Anita alive, another battle opened beneath their feet. A battle for control over the urgent decisions around Anita, a battle over Bill as shield or stamp, a battle over truth before truth is turned into a weapon. Season 1 closed on fear, but Season 2 opened on something even more ruthless, the realization that Anita's illness may be tragedy, but that tragedy is being turned into opportunity by a scheme not yet fully revealed, and by the time they uncover it, it may already be too late to save the things they once believed could never be shaken. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. All the content I create is purely speculative and based on my personal opinions. If you found the video interesting and helpful, please support me with a like and a comment.